Charlie. We're ready to rock.
2 billionaires, 1 table, 2 hours, proceeding with 2 years of my life that I will never get back. I sat there watching 2 of the wealthiest men I have ever been in a room with agree with each other so completely, so fluently, that the air itself seemed to change temperature. And I remember the exact thought that went through my head, because I've never forgotten it, and this is a full-on true story. Who am I to challenge these people? Really, who am I? These men had already won. Whatever game you think you're playing, they had finished it. 9 figures deep, multiple exits, the kind of net worth that stops being a number and starts being a personality trait. And here I was, one little measly advisor at the end of a very long table, holding a question I sort of asked, but didn't ask it enough. So I didn't ask it. 2 years later, the project was dead. Not a slow fade, an absolute collapse. Money gone, timelines gone, the whole thing folded in on itself like it had never had a skeleton to begin with. And I keep coming back to that room.
Smash the like button.
Because it was not short on money. It wasn't short on talent. It wasn't even short on effort. What the room was short on curiosity. Nobody in it was still asking questions. They stopped needing to. That's it. That is the episode today. Not a story about power, wealth, billionaires, any of them being reckless. It's a story about what happens to the human brain the moment it starts mistaking a scoreboard for a crystal ball.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Right, here's what nobody tells you about wealth at that altitude. You see, it doesn't just buy houses and jets and the right table at the restaurant that doesn't even have a website. It buys something by far more dangerous. It buys authority in rooms where it hasn't even earned it yet. Because once someone has built one enormous, undeniable thing, the room stops evaluating their next idea on its own merits. It starts evaluating it through the halo of the last win or the last title. And the terrifying part is, the person themselves does the exact same thing to their own thinking. They stop separating I was right from I am right. And those become the same sentence in their head. I've sat in enough of these rooms to tell you the tell. It is not arrogance. I know you think it is, but it's not exactly arrogance. You see, arrogance is loud and easy to spot. You see, this is quieter. It is the absence of a follow-up question. Simply, it's a room full of extremely intelligent people who have collectively agreed to stop being curious, because curiosity would mean admitting that they might not already have the answer. And no way, mister, would that happen. And when the person funding the room is the one who stopped asking the questions, everyone downstream stops too. That is not a coincidence. That is the room protecting its own paycheck. Now, before we go further, I want you to sit with a few names, not billionaires necessarily, people of wealth or people of power, just people with enough power in the room that nobody dared say, "Are you sure about that?" Steve Ballmer, CEO of Microsoft, not a nobody. In 2007, on stage in front of USA Today, he looked at the iPhone and said, and I quote,
"There's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. No chance."
Then, because one dismissal was not enough, he added he'd rather have Microsoft's software on 60, 70, 80% of the world's phones than deal with whatever Apple's little 2% experiment was going to amount to. 2 years later, he was calling the iPhone's momentum clear. The room didn't just go silent. It went and bought an iPhone. John Antioco, CEO of Blockbuster, in 2000, Netflix's founder walked into his office and offered to sell him the entire company, streaming ambitions and all, for $50 million. $50 million. That's not $50 billion. For a corporation, that's nothing. He called it a niche business and dismissed the whole pitch as dot-com hysteria. His own executives reportedly laughed the founders out of the room. Netflix is now worth over $150 billion. Blockbuster is a single novelty store in Oregon that people visit, ironically, the way you'd visit a cautionary tale, with a gift shop attached.
Oh my God.
And my personal favorite, Kodak. Not one guy, an entire management culture. In 1975, a Kodak engineer named Steven Sasson builds the world's first digital camera inside Kodak's own labs using Kodak's own money. He shows it to leadership. The reaction? As Sasson has told it for decades,
"That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it."
Kodak didn't miss digital photography. Kodak invented it, held it in its own hands, and asked it politely to shut up. 37 years later, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. None of these men were fools. That is the whole point. Ballmer built one of the most valuable companies on earth. Antioco had already turned Blockbuster around once, negotiating studio deals nobody else could get. Kodak scientists were good enough to invent the future, by apparently accident, in a lab on a Tuesday. These were rooms full of proven, battle-tested judgment. And every single one of them looked directly at that thing that was about to end them and said some version of, cute. But no, it is never the fool in the room who kills the company. It is the winner who stopped expecting to be wrong.
Leaders often feel isolated, unsure how people shape business success. Unusual Practice's insightful series reveals why CEOs struggle and how to chart growth in today's fast-changing world. Discover clarity. Listen to the Corner Office series now.
This isn't only a boardroom problem. It's the exact same wiring in the room where wars get decided, and you don't need history books for this one. It is happening right now as we speak. The US and Israel launched a joint war on Iran back in February, aimed at wiping out its nuclear program. A ceasefire held for a while. This week, it collapsed, both sides trading fresh strikes over the Strait of Hormuz, the kind of vital shipping lane where no deal gets very expensive very fast. And in the middle of that collapse, with gas prices climbing and the agreement in ashes, the man who started it stood at a podium and told reporters,
"I think we're doing phenomenally well."
not we're managing a difficult situation. Not this is more complicated than we hoped. Phenomenally well. While the ceasefire he'd signed months earlier was actively falling apart behind him. And to be fair, because this pattern doesn't belong to one side of the negotiating table, Iran's chief negotiator was doing his own version of the same dance, insisting Washington had broken the deal first and declaring, "We don't fold." Two men, two podiums, both certain the other one blinked first, both certain their own read of the room is the correct one. That's the whole episode in a miniature. It's not a comment on one leader's politics. It's what conviction does to anyone once retreat starts costing more than admitting the mistake. Nobody in that dynamic is going to be the one who says, actually, this isn't working. Because in a war room, same as a boardroom, saying it out loud costs more than staying silent and hoping the outcome eventually agrees with you. Money talks. Power talks louder. And the room, whichever room it is, goes quiet either way.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Here's the question I should have asked 2 years ago, and the one I'm asking you right now. Does having a proven track record make someone better at seeing the future? Or does it just make them more attached to being right? Because building something and predicting something, by the way, are not the same skill. One is execution under known conditions, and the other is judgment under conditions that don't exist yet. A person can be a genuine world-class operator, someone who can build a company out of nothing but conviction and a spreadsheet, and still be catastrophically wrong about what happens next. Because those are two different muscles. We just keep pretending they're the same one because it's more comfortable to believe that winners keep winning. Think about the last time someone senior to you was confidently wrong. Not incompetent, confidently wrong. That's a different flavor entirely. Incompetence gets challenged. Confidence, backed by a track record, gets deferred to. Nobody in that Madison Avenue conference room, myself included, wanted to be the one who said, I think this is the wrong bet. Because saying it out loud meant saying, I might see something you don't. And the unspoken rule of rooms like that is you don't get to see something they don't.
Do as I say and you live.
So humans have a well-documented, deeply embarrassing habit. We rewrite history around outcomes. So if someone succeeds, we say they knew what they were doing. If someone fails, we say they made mistakes. It sounds obvious when I say it like that, almost too obvious for it to matter. But watch how it plays out in real time, and it stops being obvious and starts being bloody expensive. Brilliant decisions fail constantly. Terrible decisions succeed constantly. Timing gets mistaken for strategy. Luck gets a LinkedIn post written about it and calls itself genius, and the outcome is loud. The process that led to it is invisible, and because we can't see the process, we do the laziest thing available to a busy brain, and we infer the process from the result. Someone made $1 million, so the decision that led there must have been sound. Except sometimes they weren't. Sometimes the market forgave them. Sometimes they were early to something and mistook early for right. And sometimes 3 things had to go their way and 2 of them were completely out of their control. And afterward, the story gets cleaned up into a straight line because a straight line is easier to sell in an interview. We don't actually trust good judgment. We trust the appearance of a successful outcome. And those are not the same currency, even though we spend them like they are. Now, here's the part of this that gets personal for me, and probably for a fair few of you listening. If you're an advisor, a consultant, a founder, a creative, anyone who builds things that don't exist yet, you live in a different room than the one I just described. You live in the space of the possible. You see risks before they happen. You clock problems before they're visible on anyone else's dashboard. You spot opportunity while it's still theoretical, while there is no deck, no traction, no proof. And the world does not reward that. At least not at first. The world demands evidence before it hands you permission. That's the paradox nobody warns you about when you decide to build something new, to create it. You have to believe in something that has no receipts yet. You're asking people to trust a possibility over an outcome, and outcomes are what everyone's actually trained to trust. I have watched brilliant people get dismissed in rooms because they hadn't yet built the thing that would prove them right. And I've also watched far less sharp people get given the benefit of the doubt purely because their bank balance did the talking for them. That is not fairness. That's just how the room is wired. Money is powerful because it compounds. But here's the part that gets left out of every glossy founder story. Before it compounds, it punishes you. Before the breakthrough, nobody sees the value. Nobody trusts the vision. Nobody gives you the benefit of the doubt you're desperate for. You're the person in the room everyone quietly hopes will just stop talking. After the breakthrough, suddenly, everyone says it was obvious. The same person who couldn't get a meeting 18 months earlier is now an expert, booked for panels, asked what the secret was, and the secret, if we're honest, was rarely pure knowledge. Sometimes it was timing. Sometimes it was capital they did not earn. They inherited or raised or hung out with. Sometimes the flywheel simply started turning and everyone standing nearby got credit for having pushed it. I am not saying success is undeserved. I'm saying we backfill the story of deserving it after the fact, and then we use that backfilled story as evidence the person's judgment is now permanently superior. That's the trap. Not the money. The story we tell about the money. Let me give you the actual mechanism, because this isn't just an observation, it is a pattern. And once you see it, you're not going to be able to unsee it. See, you make a decision. It works. The outcome reinforces your belief that your decision-making process is exceptional.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
You begin trusting the process less and the identity more. You stop listening to information that contradicts your self-image. That's it. Guys, that's the whole loop. It's 5 steps. And by the end of it, you've got a person who is no longer evaluating information. They're protecting a self-concept. And the wealthier and more publicly successful someone becomes, the fewer people around them are willing to be the friction in that loop.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Nobody wants to be the one who tells the man who just made 9 figures or who just sat in a position that his next idea might be soft. So the loop runs uninterrupted. Nobody flags it. It just compounds the same way the money did, except this time what's compounding is the distance between the person and reality. Success can become the evidence that blinds you, not because success is fake, but because it's incomplete evidence being asked to do a job it was never built for. All right, here's the unpopular belief. I do not think money creates wisdom. Nope. I think money amplifies conviction. And conviction, unmatched by curiosity, is one of the most dangerous forces in any room, boardroom or otherwise. A person with no money and high awareness can see something a billionaire completely misses. A billionaire can understand something that person never will. Neither of those facts cancels the other out. The mistake is treating net worth as a proxy for foresight in either direction. So the real question isn't, how do I get more evidence of past success? It's actually this. Can you stay teachable after you become successful? That's it. That is the whole test. Not intelligence, not talent, not resourcefulness. Whether the wins you've already banked make you more willing to ask questions or less. Most people, if they're honest, know exactly which way that pendulum has swung for them lately. Money talks, and the room goes silent. But maybe the most dangerous room isn't the one without money in it. Maybe it's the one where everyone in it has enough money to stop questioning their own selves. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and don't forget to subscribe, like, or share with a friend.
Mom, somebody just followed me.
You can fool some of the people all of the time, and you can fool all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool Mom.